All right, welcome back to the In the Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Sam Gold. It's been a while since we did one of these sit-downs, just a straight-up NFL discussion. We just had the draft. We're outside today. It's beautiful. Happy May, everybody. My birthday's tomorrow. Vibes are good. But Al gave the thumbs up. He's really far away from me for some reason, standing over there. But the vibes are good. We're outside. We're going to talk about the NFL draft. I got a lot of information on my phone, so I don't forget anything. I'm human, all right? I know you want me to just read from my head, but I have to read from the phone, okay? Because it's been a lot the last couple weeks with the draft and everything, and I got to memorize a lot. I'm human too. All right. So let's start. We're not going to go through every team. Obviously, that's going to take way too long. We're not going to go through every single pick, every single storyline. But I've concocted 3 winners and losers in terms of teams in this draft. And then, I'll discuss some of the other big storylines as well. You can't miss out on the Michael Penixes of the world. But you guys know, I'm sure the Falcons are going to be in the losers category. But we're not going to spoil it yet because we're going to start with the top 3 teams that won the draft this past weekend. Let's start with the team that I feel like a lot of people aren't jumping out of their seat talking about right now, which is why I want to mention them first, because I thought they had arguably the most underrated draft in the entire NFL this time around. And it's a team that hasn't had a a first-round pick in 8 years. Let's go with the Los Angeles Rams. So first of all, we'll get to their pick in a second. The common theme of this draft was there wasn't a defensive player picked until pick 15? When Laiatu Latu went to the Colts, which is not who I had on my bingo card going as the first defensive player off the board. But here we are. If you think about the top 3 defensive players in the draft, I would have picked Dallas Turner, maybe Quinyon Mitchell, and then Jared Verse. And the Rams picked 19, 20? And they got Jared Verse in the first round. I mean, that is a phenomenal pick. Obviously, Aaron Donald retired this offseason. You need to immediately repair that defensive line. People are like, the Rams need another wide receiver. Sure, they can use a third guy, but I saw some people mocking like Brian Thomas to the Rams, which would have been too much. I'm glad they went defense here, and they got lucky. This guy completely fell to them. They almost got Dallas Turner if the Vikings didn't trade up and get him, which, by the way, shout out Vikings. They're not going to be mentioned on this list, but they definitely, if I had a top 5 winners, they would be in my top 5. But yeah, they got Jared Verse, who I thought was the second best defensive end in the entire draft. You put him on the edge, and then right in the second round, you get Braden Fisk, defensive tackle, Florida State. Like, obviously no one's replacing Aaron Donald. That's just a given. But if you want to start somewhere, start with 2 guys that were in my top 50 at defense. Or just overall, not top 50 defense, but on defense in the top 50. You start with those 2 guys, and you're already on your way to repairing that defensive line. Now, obviously, it's like when the Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill. Like, you can't replace Tyreek Hill, but you can sure do a hell of a lot to try to fill some other holes and to make it as a whole around the same. So that's what the Rams are trying to do here with this draft. They got Blake Corum as their 3rd pick, running back. He was a top 3 to 5 prospect for running backs coming out of the draft. And he lands right next to Kyron Williams, 2 young guys that you haven't even had to pay yet, going in the backfield. I just think the Rams are a smart organization. Now, a lot of people don't like their owner. I'm not a huge fan of Kroenke, but you got to admit, just with their drafts, even with the limited picks that they've had, I mean, there's a reason why they haven't had a first-round pick in so long is because they just love making moves in the offseason, giving away capital. And then when they finally have capital again, since they picked Jared Goff, they go out and have a great draft. So you can't really complain if you're a Rams fan right now. You just came back from, Stafford coming back from an injury, made the playoffs, and now you picked your top 3 guys are very, very solid. Not to mention your 4th guy was another defensive end. So they're really overhauling the defensive line with Aaron Donald leaving. So I thought they did the smart thing here. They're definitely my number 1 winners, just because I think it's going under the radar right now how good their draft was. So shout out. All right, my second team for winners of the draft. Now, this is a team that has been talked about a lot. I would say the team with the highest number of steals, late round steals especially, the Detroit Lions. Now, here's the thing with the Lions. I'm getting a vibe where I don't think they're going to be bad by any means this offseason. No way. But it does feel like if they're going to continue being the Lions, they're going to take a small step back when people are probably predicting them to make the Super Bowl. But I hope they make the Super Bowl. I wanted the Lions to win so badly last year. I don't know what Al's doing behind the camera. He's doing a weird dance, and it's distracting me. And I swear, if a bee lands on my shoulder during this podcast, I'm sprinting into the woods, probably where there's more bees. Okay, welcome to May, everybody. Let's talk about the Lions. Okay, we got Terrion Arnold, which, by the way, I didn't have him as my number one corner until a few days before the draft. Until I started seeing some of his interviews, he's got big-time Sauce Gardner vibes, just with his confidence. And then I really started looking to a lot of his highlights. I still might put Quinyon Mitchell in terms of overall talent, overall ability for all the things he could do on the field ahead of Terrion Arnold. But I don't know, man. I think Terrion Arnold fits so well with that Lions defense and that swagger. And I just thought it was a great pick. They traded up for him, too. I mean, he's an Alabama guy. You can't go wrong with Alabama. It's just... That's just the first pick. I mean, I haven't even gotten to the fact that they got another defensive back who was mocked late first, early second, Ennis Rakestraw. Giovanni Manu, I'm not really too sure who that is, from British Columbia, offensive tackle. I'm just going to skip that one. But Sionavaki, late in the draft. Mekhi Wingo, who was on the top 10 list for like 2 straight rounds. Same with Christian Mahogany. They both got in the 5th and 6th round. Shout out Christian Mahogany, by the way. He is my cousin's next-door neighbor. He got drafted by the Lions. We used to play football with him growing up. He used to come over to the backyard, throw around. He was a tall, big kid, and I was like, not surprised at all when they told me he was, going for the draft. He's a guard now. He's like 6'3", coming out of Boston College. He's an absolute animal, and he was, I believe he tore his ACL or Achilles. It's one of the two in 2022, which is why maybe he fell a couple rounds. But, I mean, I'm looking all over the Lions Reddit. Like, this was a complete steal. He should have went in the 4th round. He started making Mel Kiper's top 10 list when the 4th round started. And they got him in the 6th. He went 1 pick before the Chiefs, too, which I was very upset because the Chiefs do need a guard to replace Trey Smith in a year. Assuming we're not going to pay him. I don't think we will. But, man, I was really disappointed when he got picked right before the Chiefs. I thought that would be insane if my cousin's next-door neighbor ended up on my favorite team. That would have been crazy. But, hey, if there's another team I'd pick, it'd probably be the Dolphins or the Lions. So I'm happy for him. And he might win a ring next year. Who knows, as a rookie. So that was great for them. But, yeah, the Lions overall, they just got so many steals. I mean, to get Mekhi Wingo, another guy that was an early day 3 prospect, and you get him late in the draft like that, I mean, the Lions just know what they're doing. I mean, we kind of questioned them a year or two ago, taking Gibbs early, and then Gibbs ended up being great. Just taking some of these guys way too early, it just panned out. They just paid Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was a late round pick, and now they're paying him one of the top amounts in the NFL. So things are flying high with the Lions right now, and that's why they're on my top 3. Okay, and the number 3, it's gonna be an NFC North team. I want you to guess. 3, 2, 1. No, it's not the Baltimore Ravens. Even though the Baltimore Ravens did have another great draft, they always take the people that fall. I'm gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, though. They had two glaring needs going into the draft. Offensive line, wide receiver. And I thought offensive line definitely eked out wide receiver in terms of the needs that they had. And they got Troy Fontenot at, pick 20, pick 19? I mean, that's insane. Troy Fontenot. The Bengals, by the way, shout out the Bengals. They didn't have a bad draft, but there were 2 highly touted tackles left. And, Troy Fontenot, at least in terms of analysis, was the clear number 1, or he was the 1A. And then Amarius Mims was the 1B. And then, of course, the Bengals just go and pick Mims instead of Fontenot. And then Fontenot just falls to the Steelers. That's just such an AFC North thing to happen. But, yeah, you went to tackle. And then you're thinking, oh, I thought they were going to get maybe Jackson Powers-Johnson, Graham Barton in the interior offensive line. Oh, wait, what about another top 5 guy? Zach Frazier falls to them in the 2nd round. Boom, now you repaired your center, and basically your whole offensive line is good to go. That's it. That's what the Steelers do. Some teams just get it. You know what I mean? We'll get to the Falcons in a second, but some teams just get it, like the Steelers and the Ravens. They just take the guy who falls to them, best player available at the position that they need, and they don't overthink it. And now they have their offensive line repaired. So that was a great pick. And then Roman Wilson falls in the 3rd round. A guy who was mocked to the Chiefs at 32 a few times. That's a speedster. He's going to be in the slot. Going into the draft, the Steelers' 2nd wide receiver was Van Jefferson. So to get a guy like Roman Wilson, who was a top 10 wide receiver prospect coming out of the draft, just another steal in the 3rd round. I don't get it. I don't get how the Steelers do it. It's great. And then Peyton Wilson, linebacker. Late in the 3rd round. He was arguably the best linebacker coming out of the draft. And the Steelers are like, yeah, we have a good defense. Let's just make it even better with a top 3 linebacker in the late 3rd round. Okay. It pisses me off. I shouldn't be pissed off personally as a Chiefs fan because, like, obviously going to the season, I'm not worried about the Steelers as much as other teams. But, like, it's got to piss you off, especially if you're a Bengals fan, if you're a Browns fan, or if you just hate the Steelers in general. Like, they can't keep getting away with this. And you ask yourself, how does Mike Tomlin and these guys end up 9-8 or better every season? Just go back to this. Because their glaring need was offensive line. They repaired it. They also got one of the best defensive linebackers in the draft and one of the best wide receivers in the 3rd round. So there you go. Okay, let's move on. I think it's time to finally talk about this team, which has definitely gotten the most coverage the last few days. It's the Atlanta Falcons. I think we all saw coming. Did a bug just fall off my head? I don't know what's going on. Okay. Welcome to May. I've said that 3 times now. I should probably stop. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons. The obvious one, Michael Penix, 8th overall. Do I even have to... Okay, I will go on a rant because I haven't talked about it yet. Now, here's the thing. I really don't care what the Falcons do. It doesn't affect my life. The Chiefs and Falcons don't really have anything in common at this point. So I'm not looking at the Falcons really, like, wondering what they're going to do. But it doesn't matter. When it comes to this, it just pisses me off. When it feels like, look, if Michael Penix ends up being good, fine, whatever. But you could have traded back. You could have just not paid Kirk Cousins over $100 million for 4 years with all that guaranteed money. Like, I already thought it was a mistake. Number one, last offseason, not getting Lamar Jackson if you're going to pay a quarterback that much money. And then this offseason, you didn't want to hire Bill Belichick. You didn't want to even go after Justin Fields. And then you go out and pay a 35-year-old guy coming off of a torn Achilles. You pay him $100 million guaranteed at 35 years old. And then you pick Michael Penix. And then there's that funny video, I'm sure everybody's seen it, of the GM trying to explain to Arthur Blank just, like, why he chose Michael Penix. And it was, like, him just really going through the mental gymnastics trying to convince him that it was a good choice and that it was great for the future, even though, like, it just pisses me off when me, as some dumb 22-year-old kid, it's the last time I get to say it, it's my birthday tomorrow, as a dumb 22-year-old kid, it pisses me off when I feel like I could have drafted better. I mean, what are these people thinking? You have all offseason. The Falcons were eliminated in early January. They had a month longer than the Chiefs to decide who had a much better draft than the Falcons. I'm not comparing the Chiefs administration to the Falcons, obviously, because we know the Chiefs is better, but I'm just saying, like, you go out and pick Kyle Pitts, you go out and pick Bijan, you repair your offensive line, you get Drake London. I feel like those are all solid picks. Maybe not Kyle Pitts as much because you got him in the top 10. You don't want to do a tight end like that. But yeah, I felt like you had one missing piece. Like, I was content with them getting Kirk Cousins at this point, even though I'd rather them get Justin Fields for cheap or Lamar Jackson last year if they're going to pay for it. But it also puts Michael Penix in an odd position. Like, he's like, damn, I might not start until I'm 26 years old now. Like, how's that going to do with his confidence? Great, he gets to learn from Kirk Cousins. This isn't a Jordan Love with Aaron Rodgers situation. Jordan Love was picked at the end of the 1st round. This is an 8th overall pick. And the GM of the Falcons, I forget his name, but his excuse was that is that they have Kirk Cousins now, and that they're not going to have a top 10 pick for the next few years because they're going to be so much better with Kirk Cousins, which I don't even know if I believe that. So that they now have to get a guy who they believe in at quarterback for their future, since this is going to be their only chance. What if Kirk Cousins tears his ACL again, and then you don't even have him, and you paid him all that money, and then you have another top 10 pick? What if that happens? GM. Like, can you just think for 1 second what's going on? You could have had anybody. You could have had Dallas Turner, the best defensive player in the draft. You could have had Quinion Mitchell, the best corner in the NFL draft. Hell, if you wanted to go offense, go Roma Dunze at that point. It would have been better than Michael Penix. I don't know. So many people have ranted about it. I don't want to keep going on and on. I mean, the rest of their draft was okay. It was kind of forgettable. Except for in the 2nd round, they traded up to get Rook Ororororo. I don't even know how you say his last name, but I think that's it. Who names their first son? Who names their first... Okay, I can't talk. Let me do that one more time. Who names their son's first name Rook? And then you have a guy named Michael Pitts. Maybe cut that. Maybe don't. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just ranting right now. We have a lot to talk about. But that's the Falcons. I'm done. Shout out Michael Penix, by the way. Good guy. Very good guy. I feel bad for him. It's not his fault. Anyways, we have the Raiders next. I don't even have to look at the notes. It's really just one pick. I have a huge problem with the Raiders. Now, I will say, some of it wasn't their fault. Because of the Falcons picking Michael Penix, they got screwed. Because they were touted to get Michael Penix. They might have even traded back and got him in the second round. But they got screwed. They had no option at quarterback. There were 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. That's an NFL record. So, I was thinking, okay, now that the Raiders are up, it feels like they're probably just going to pick a tackle, maybe interior offensive line. And then they go get Brock Bowers. And, people are like, ooh, that's such an Antonio Pierce pick. What a great weapon. Sure, they need weapons. But also they drafted Michael Mayer last year. If you're going to go for a weapon, why are you going for another tight end? I guess you can run 2 tight end sets, but, I don't know. I just didn't think it was a perfect fit for them. They definitely need tackle help. I know they picked a tackle. I think it was second or third round. Or they picked Jackson Powers Johnson. That's who they picked. Guard or center. One of the interior offensive line. I don't care. But I don't know. I don't know with the Raiders. It just feels like you just got rid of. Wait. Ow, you cut this. Wait, 1 second. What's his name? Okay. You just got rid of Darren Waller. You just picked up Michael Mayer, and now you're going for Brock Bowers. People were saying the Jets, who actually need a tight end, picking Brock Bowers was the wrong choice. It's funny because they ended up picking a tackle, and that was the better choice. And then the Raiders just went out and got Brock Bowers. I feel like they just got too excited about him. I don't think he's going to be bad. It's just, you have Gardner Minshew. You weren't able to get your quarterback. I guess you got to go help him. There's the B. I'm going to go sprint out into the woods if it happens one more time. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe that's why I'm upset right now. I don't know. I feel like I've just said a lot in this episode, in a pissed off manner. But I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about the Raiders because I'm not worried about them. Here's the thing with the Raiders. One last point. Okay, here we go. The reason I don't like the Brock Bowers pick is because I don't feel like, and I'm happy about it. Personally, as a Chiefs fan, I'm happy about it. But from an unbiased perspective, I feel like they didn't do a lot with the draft, not in the offseason, but with the draft, to compete with the Chiefs. And that's all you really have to do if you're an NFC West team at this point. You have to compete with the Chiefs. Now, I think getting Christian Wilkins is obviously a good move on the defensive side. But I'm sorry, Gardner Minshew's not going to face off and have a shootout with Patrick Mahomes, even if Brock Bowers is there. It's just not going to happen. So, I don't know. I would give it a B- pick. And then finally, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now, it's interesting because I keep going back and forth on their pick, Keon Coleman, who I actually would be more positive about. I don't think Keon Coleman was a terrible pick. It was more of the fact that they kept trading out, and one of the trades, the first trade, was with the Chiefs. Now, I'm happy about it, obviously, but I'm sorry. They had all this stuff in the offseason, the Chiefs definitely can't get Stephon Diggs. Any trade is off limits with the Chiefs, and then immediately they go out and give the Chiefs basically Xavier Worthy with their draft, and they're just trading back. I know they're gaining a little bit more capital, but who do they get from it? Cedric Van Brand Granger? Who is that? Edifon? Oh, actually, that guy's pretty good, the linebacker, but I don't know. Once again, it's not horrible. The only team that really had a straight up bad draft was the Falcons. But the Bills, once again, it's kind of like the Raiders. They should be trying to compete with the Chiefs. The first thing you don't do is trade with the Chiefs. And that's exactly what you did. And that was to get Keon Coleman. You could have had Adonai Mitchell at least. Now, I don't hate Keon Coleman at all. Actually, I love his interviews. He's a great guy. And I'm sure he'll be a fine player. But, I don't know. You get Cole Bishop, another white defensive back, late in the second round. I don't know. It's just, it was a very lackluster. It didn't spark anything for me with the Bills. It didn't feel like they got significantly better, especially since they had so many holes to fill. And you go first pick Keon Coleman. I just don't know if he's enough of a game changer. I don't particularly not like him. It just feels like his ceiling's not as high as an Adonai Mitchell possibly. Or Xavier Worthy if they would have just picked him and stuck with their draft pick. So, yeah, it was interesting. I wasn't a big fan of it. But, yeah, there's your winners and losers. I pretty much talked about all the major storylines. If I want to get into the Chiefs for just one quick second, we picked Xavier Worthy. We filled a big hole that we needed. Now, he was not my number one wide receiver there for the Chiefs at that point. But you know what? If there's one guy or if there's one team to make Xavier Worthy not John Ross coming out of this draft, it's going to be the Chiefs. Plus, he's a better route runner than John Ross. So I was happy with the pick. And it just came out that Rashee Rice might not even be suspended for the 2024 season. Now, definitely 2025, if not 2024. But, To have those three guys as your top three receivers, plus Kelsey, plus Pacheco out of the backfield, I just feel a lot more comfortable now. We could have went second round. We could have went Adonai Mitchell, who I liked a little bit better. But overall, we just went back to back. I'm not going to complain about the Chiefs picks. I have no reason to either. I thought, especially the rest of our draft was very, very solid. I'd give it like an A-, maybe even an A. We filled all the needs that we had. Kingsley Su'a-Mattia, that was an offensive tackle out of BYU that we were mocked to get him at 32, and we got him at the end of the second round. Great pick. I love that guy. And then we filled a tight end slot, Jared Wiley out of TCU, 6'7". I love his highlights. He'll definitely... We just extended Kelsey, by the way. I haven't talked about that as well. So Kelsey's going to be playing for another 3-4 years, which is great. But to have a guy like Wiley as your second tight end, he can develop under Kelsey. Maybe he becomes something. But I thought, we definitely needed tight end depth, which was good. And then Jaden Hicks, man. I can't believe we got him in the 4th round. He completely fell. He could have been a 2nd or 3rd rounder. That guy's a dog at safety. He can fly around anywhere. Our need was definitely corner over safety, but he could play both. He could play either. It depends what, if we're in a nickel or a dime set, how many safeties are out on the field, how many corners. It doesn't matter. Like, this guy can play anything. He can fly around the field. I love that pick. That might actually be my favorite pick of the entire draft for the Chiefs. And then, we filled some holes at the offensive line, interior offensive line with C.J. Hansen and Hunter Norzad. I thought that was pretty solid. And Kamal Haddon, too, corner in the 6th round. That right there is giving me, like, Jalen Watson vibes, how we got him in the 7th round. I just feel like the Chiefs... lately, it reminds me a lot of our 2022 draft. I think we got some steals. We traded up with the Bills to get Trent McDuffie in 2022. We traded up this year with the Bills to get Xavier Worthy. Now, hopefully, Xavier Worthy's on the same level as Trent McDuffie. That would be insane. Because every time we traded up with the Bills, we've gotten Patrick Mahomes, McDuffie, and now Worthy. So we'll see if he lives up to that hype. But overall, I give the Chiefs a solid, at least A- for sure. I guess if I had to pick like an overrated draft, if I had to pick one team, probably go the Eagles, to be honest. They're a team that gets way too much praise. Like, I thought their first 2 picks were good. Their number one need, of course, was secondary, and they went out and got 2 first-round projected corners in Quinyon Mitchell and then Cooper DeJean. So that's very solid. But other than that, I feel like, first of all, the last few years, they haven't really hit many home runs. I feel like people are saying, like, right after the draft, on paper, it seems like the Eagles always pick the best guys, which is true. Last year, they had Jordan Davis, they had Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, and all those guys so far, they're not bad. None of them are bad, but I feel like none of them have become great yet, which they were all touted as, like, this is the best draft class the Eagles have ever had. I don't know, I just think they're not bad, but the Eagles have been a little bit overrated. Also, their draft room looked like a cult on day one. They're all wearing the same suit with no tie and a white shirt under it. There's just weird vibes coming from that organization. I don't know what it is. It's obviously the GM, but, like, there's something weird going on with the Eagles. I feel like people talk about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys being a cult. Watch out for the Eagles, because the vibes there are weird. And I didn't really like the rest of the draft. I don't know what they were doing picking Will Shipley, running back. I mean, they did not need to pick a running back in the 4th round. And I just felt like they didn't really get a ton of great impact players after day 1, or after Cooper DeJean in day 2. So I don't know. We'll see how they do. I don't think they had a terrible draft, but I think it's definitely overrated. People are giving them A's, saying that they always just knock it out of the park. No, enough. Underrated. It pains me to say it. Now, I'm not latching this on to the hype that we know this team's going to get, because they get this every single offseason. It's the Chargers. I think the Chargers did have an underrated draft, though. I thought, on paper, Jim Harbaugh did the smart thing. He did the right thing. He got Joe Alt at 5, who might end up being the best player from this draft entirely. You saw him getting picked at his house. He stands up. This guy's 6'9", by the way. This guy's a monster. Shout out John Alt. He played on the Chiefs. That's his dad. Now Joe Alt coming out of the draft. I thought that was a great pick. They got Ladd McConkey in the 2nd round. Another guy who I would have picked over Xavier Worthy. I love Ladd McConkey. I don't know what it is. It's giving me Cooper Kupp, maybe Cooper Kupp Light 2.0 vibes. But I really like that pick. They got Jerry Rice's son in, like, the 7th round. Now, it's just a name, but, like, I thought that was cool. And that's such a Harbaugh thing to get Jerry Rice's son. I know, I just feel like they filled their roster spots pretty well with what they had. And the Chargers definitely became a better team. Now, I'm not going to hype them up as being this 11-6 team like everyone does, but I will give them their props. If there's one out of the 3 other AFC West teams that I'm now more scared of, it is the Chargers. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that's about it. The draft was a lot of fun watching it. Please comment down below what you guys' favorite team is and what draft grade you give them. Comment down below which teams you think had the best draft, had the worst draft, any opinions that I completely got wrong. You could rag on me for whatever. But, it's a lot of fun. Now we're kind of in this slow portion of the offseason. I think we're going to have the schedule release coming up in a couple of weeks. But then after that, we got the rest of May, June. And then, mid to late July, training camp starts. So we're kind of hitting this slow period of the offseason. So I don't know how many specific NFL sit-down podcasts discussing the league we're going to have. We'll definitely have a schedule release one in a couple weeks. But, it's going to slow down. But it's still a lot of fun doing this with you guys. We're going to try to do a lot of cool new ideas that we're coming out with. But obviously, we're still mainly revolved around football. So, yeah, that's my NFL draft recap, guys. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.